Yes, it is I, the mayor of the Airwaves, sitting in the mayor's seat this morning. And it is quite a privilege. Quite a privilege. Someday I will die, and I'll be drifting up to heaven going, wow, I got to be the mayor of the Airwaves. Thank you very much.
Well, aren't you fortunate to have Mr. B as your engineer? Because it's made your job so much easier. I've been here 2 years, and we've worked through different engineers, and he is the best.
Yeah, celebrating a year with us. I believe we're coming up on it, but please don't let him hear that, because then he'll want some sort of a bonus or something. You know? So I have my nephew on the line. A year ago, a few days over a year ago, I did not know he existed. I was getting a massage in town. I walked in, I told my massage therapist, she said, how are you? I said, well, I'm a little sad today, you know. It's just one of those days, I don't know. You know, I was thinking, my parents are gone, my brother's gone, other people are gone, and, you know, I don't have any children. Suddenly my niece, who my brother never got to know he had a daughter for sure, calls, and we've been together now 10 years after my brother died. She came along and her children and said, Uncle Rhett, I have news. Scott also had a son.
He got around.
So there's my massage therapist with tears in her eyes. I'm crying, going, what in the world? It's like the best Christmas gift in the universe, or you could say my birthday gift, because coming up in November is my birthday. So James was and now I've got his sons. Now tell the people about your sons, the ages, names and ages of your sons, James.
Okay, Jimmy is 18 years old. He just started University of New Haven. He's unfortunately following in my footsteps and getting into computer science. My son Luke is 16 years old, and he is a hockey goalie. He's in high school currently.
And you have a beautiful bride named Liz, who is a doll.
Yep.
And you're blessed to have her and blessed to have them. And tell them also about now the irony that is that Cece's sons are the exact same ages as your sons.
Yeah, days apart. It's pretty crazy that, you know, while I was going through the experience of having children, there was a sister out there in the world experiencing the same thing, just days apart from me.
Yeah, and Elijah and Jonah are the same ages as your boys.
Yeah, well, and, you know, if you think about the loss of adoption, there's a great example. Cousins that didn't know each other until they're 16 and 18.
Yeah, and look how I was robbed. Here I would have had this other young boy, we would have gone fishing together. Who knows what we would have done together?
Anything.
You were
Possibilities are endless.
I was in the music industry. You know, I did jingles for radio and TV, national jingles.
So did I.
There you go. And here you are up there. We could have been working together. We could have had a hit record. We could be driving around in our Rolls Royce right now, throwing dollars out the door to the poor.
Well, you never know. When you talk about, you know, what do we want to accomplish from this? Well, adoption needs to change. The fact that there is still children being adopted in this world that have fake birth certificates and no knowledge of their history is an abomination.
So you two are
absolutely insanity.
So you guys are not anti-adoption. You just want
yes,
there to. Oh, you are.
I am totally. The way it is now, it totally.
No.
You know what? Legal guardianship. The word adoption insinuates a falsifying of a birth certificate, and a disability of me accessing it, preventing me from knowing my natural family. That's what adoption means to me, and I'm against that. I'm for when there's truly a need to find a child, parents, and a family, getting them legal guardians.
Okay, now the lady that's on the line today, introduce my audience in case people have just tuned in. Who is she and why is she on the show with you?
She's gone through a lot more of the healing process and acknowledgement of PTSD.
What's her name?
Associated with being adopted.
What's her name?
Mary Stuntz.
Mary Stuntz, okay.
And Mary has done a lot of research. You know, God is used as a tool and to condone and promote adoption. And Mary has gotten herself very well versed and educated on that subject to counter the arguments that God is adoption is a wonderful godly thing to do.
Well,
it is not.
Well, I don't know. The dust hasn't settled in my mind yet, and maybe it never will. But Mary, I want to
interject.
Yeah.
Let me interject here for a minute before I lose my train of thought. Based on your little scenario about knowing your nephew and going fishing and getting what kind of club is that? Anyway, the confusion, that's how while you were talking, I'm thinking, look how that would have flowed and been appropriate for all of that stuff that you didn't get to happen. That's the way it was supposed to be. But because somebody didn't do something, and then there was a need for a parent, but then who decided that the records needed to be closed?
I see what you're saying. Hold on. I get it. I'm getting it. See, I told you the dust will begin to settle. So in other words, my nephew could have still been adopted, but there could have been connection. And say, and so people aren't like, oh, well, we have to keep this hidden because we don't want James. We don't want to lose James to his real uncle.
Right. Well, and you have to realize another point. In your analogy of you adopting Mary and I, you just naturally rolled off your tongue that our natural mother would have been a drug addict. Well, the fact of the matter is, people did think that. And when I was growing up in the 70s, I heard that a lot. My mother must have been raped. She must have been a drug addict. The fact of the matter is then and today, that's not the case. That's a very, very, very small percentage, I understand. Most of the time, back then it was because of a social stigma. Today, I'm learning it's often because of temporary financial distress.
And let me tell you this. I'm seeing this now because I know Linda Leo, and Linda is your mom.
She's the girl next door.
And she is a I knew her when I was a 14, 15-year-old boy. She was 19. She went out with my brother, and obviously they lived together for a year, and James is the result of that. But Linda is an extremely gifted, realistic artist. She's phenomenal. She's very intelligent. She's soft-spoken, educated. Right. I don't know how else to put it to her, but this, and here's what the thing is, though. If I was James, though, all of a sudden I'm going to think, oh, maybe I come from somebody on the other side of the tracks. Maybe my mother was inferior. Maybe my mother was a drug addict.
You don't know.
But no. You know what? You know what this does, though? I have found out there's a definite effect on what you think. I'm going to tell you something. I know of somebody that told one of their sons that they weren't going to amount to anything and they were going to end up in prison. And this guy, he's actually an uncle of mine. The rest of the family's all charming and great. And he ended up in trouble with the law and in jail. Now, that's not my grandmother's fault that she said that to him. But because he was a rebellious little son of it. I mean, he even kicked the priest when my uncle and aunt got married. He was a late child, they were in their 40s when they had him, and he was spoiled to death. And he actually kicked the priest in the shins coming, at the wedding. It's kind of crazy. But nonetheless, when you're told something, if you think it, you tend to gravitate. I remember this. I used to pick up this old lady on Tuesday nights to go to a Bible study in upstate New York. And she was from Italy. And one time she said to me, she says, "Oh, Rhett, I want to tell you, you look so handsome with your tie and your jacket." Do you know, after she told me that every Tuesday I would dress, sometimes I changed my tie 3 times. I wanted to live up to her praise and expectation. If you're a child and you think your mother was a drug addict, kids... you think, well, that's where I'm going to end up too. I mean, I know somebody else who was adopted in Poughkeepsie, New York. Her name was Florine Wagner. She was my first girlfriend when I was 16. She was 19. And you know what? They said her mother had been a whore. So her real mother, and so she said, well, I guess that's probably what I'm going to end up doing too. She was heading bullseye for that because she thought that was, and thinking is very powerful.
Yes, and while you're saying that, I'm thinking, I used to think my mother, because we all make up stories about our mothers.
Yeah.
And my mother was a queen, and I was stolen, and they were trying to find me, which made me a princess in my mind.
Yeah.
And then, now this is how this plays out. When I started dating, when I started socializing with people, I had people accuse me, well, you want to be treated like a princess. And I did. I thought I was special. And it was all in my head. There was no reality to bounce it off of at that
Well,
point in
and
time.
also this, like for instance, you and I, James has not had this experience, but you and I both had conversion experiences as adults, right? We became believers in Jesus. How old were you when you became a believer in Jesus?
I was in my early 20s.
Okay, I was 29. Now, we know that if and this is the craziest thing, people out there that have religion, they worship a Jew on Sunday and then they hate Jews on Monday.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah,
Jesus is a Jew. I don't understand. So if you get born again, we have been adopted into the Jewish family.
Adoption.
But
Cringe.
but see, that bothers me because it says in the Bible we have been grafted in. A farmer will understand this. You take a branch from another tree, and you can actually graft it into another tree. It'll take root, and you can actually have pears and oranges on the same tree. But always now, even though half my family's Jewish, always now I feel like, as a Christian, as a quote-unquote follower of the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, that I'm somehow inferior to my Jewish brethren because they were picked long ago. I'm adopted. They're the natural root. And that kind of makes me think, oh, then I'm just worthy of the crumbs. Because even in the Bible it says, this guy comes to him and he's a Gentile. And he says, Jesus says, I am here for those chosen. At this point, this is before he dies, but he's, you have to understand the whole story. And he says, oh, yeah, but surely even the dogs get to have the crumbs on the floor. And that's when Jesus turns to him and blesses him because he gets it, So is that what we are? Should I have a bad self-opinion of myself with God because I'm not as important a son as a born Jewish son.
No, but there's a lot of emotion and a lot of stuff that comes up here because my walk with Jesus I kept telling older people in the church, that I don't think I feel God's love for me. I think I'm struggling with it because I'm adopted. And they just looked at me and said, well, then you should totally get this because we're all adopted into God's family. And so I thought, okay, there's something wrong with me. I'm just not getting it. And I let it go for a while. And I've struggled. My walk has not been straight. And it's been a lot more wobbly than a lot of people's. Because every time I get to the point where I wanted to make that breakthrough, I get stuck and I go to somebody older in the church. I don't think I'm struggling with how much God loves me because I'm adopted. And again, I would get the same thing. Well, you should totally get it. So it wasn't until last year, after I became agoraphobic, I couldn't walk out of my house because of the anxiety from the PTSD, that I decided, okay, Lord, it's you and I. Show me. And that's when he showed me. And I kept going. And people kept trying to get me to shut up. Just be grateful you were adopted. And my insides, I knew where God was leading me, and I was going to follow him. And I finally was able to surrender that little part in my heart that I was never allowed to get to because the big people kept telling me, don't go there. Yeah. Just forget about it.
No.
And the whole time, God's saying, give it to me. And I was never allowed until last year to open the door and invite him in.
Well, think about James. Now, James, you're angry. You're very angry towards God.
I don't know if I would say that I'm very angry towards God. It's hard to be angry at something you don't believe in.
Yeah, but I think you're punishing God by saying that.
Well, that's your prerogative.
I don't know. I could be wrong. And I have no right to. I have no idea what's going on in your heart and mind. But this is maybe just conjecture on my part. But I think you're just saying, hey, I don't approve of the way you handled my birth, my adoption, and so I don't believe in you. Is there any of that in that? Is there any of that in you?
it doesn't come that easy. It doesn't come like that, though, Rhett. Because first of all, you've got an adversary running around trying to keep people from believing in God. Okay, and so there's a whole spiritual realm of warfare going on besides what's already going on in the confused adoptees, life. So it's not as simple as that. These people have been hurt in the name. My crib mates have been hurt in the name of God. A lot of these people have been beaten. God loves you. Get over it. People have been adopted by well-known deliverance ministers, and then the kid was tied to the bed while holy water is being thrown over him to cast the devil out at 3 years of age. Those kind of things are going on because of the secrets.
Right.
God and the adoptee is a whole different journey than somebody else's who has a continuity. You remember, God knitted me together in my mother's womb. I was made to be with her, and then she just wasn't.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, James has been reconciled with his mother, who's alive, my childhood friend, Linda Leo, my brother's lover. And have you found your mother?
No. I had basically kind of stopped. My journey towards my wholeness was when I sent, the last part of that was sending my DNA into Ancestry, never thinking anything was going to come of it. And got the results back and hit the jackpot. I got a half-brother.
And where did you find, where is your half-brother?
He's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He's 62 years old.
Yeah.
And college graduate, a lot of similarities. And then again, we're strangers. We're half brothers, or half siblings, but we're strangers. So, this is not connection here. This is not in God's plan. Believe me. It's not. And you might think that I've got this big head because who is she to think, what God's plan is? But it's confusion is not of God. It's in the Bible. So what are you going to do? Steal birth records and confuse the kids further? The Bible tells us, man, that we are to become like little children. Suffer the little children not to come on to me. Yeah. And what are we doing? We're taking care of the orphans the way that's convenient.
Well, hold on. Now, it does say in the Bible, they ask God, what is true religion? He says to visit the widow and to take in the orphan. That's actually in the Scriptures.
Take in and taking them or using them are entirely two different things. You don't have to steal a child's birth records. Nowhere in the Bible where adoption is talked about did anybody lose their lineage. Nowhere.
Well, the church is guilty of crimes, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. The church, but see, that's the difference. The church and God sometimes are two entirely, and a lot of times two entirely different things.
The church is just man's attempt to be good enough for God, and God. That's the difference between Jesus. Most religions want you to give up your life for God, whereas in Christianity, it's that God already gave up His life for us.
Right. But see, as a child, the church and God are the same thing. And then you have this little adoptee kid who's just trying to fit in. Give me the rules. Show me the rules. How can I fit in? And God wants you to do this. And pretty soon it just gets to be too much. And they just can't believe that this loving God they're being taught about could possibly love them when there's all this confusion going on.
Okay. Now listen, we got to take a break again for the news, and then we're going to come back for a final half hour, okay?
Okay.